ready to speak with us. Thanks very much, Vipin. Great to have you with us here. Good morning, Prashant this side. Vipin, how are markets positioned? I mean, as we are getting into the thick of the earnings season, both here in India and in the US as well. Do you think some of the moves that we've seen recently will continue on the upside?
So, if you look at the markets globally, India has held up really well. Most of the countries are hiking interest rates. Korea did it last week, and the markets responded really well. You mentioned US looking to hike 75 to 100 basis points in the coming weeks. But globally, I think Japan, India, Hong Kong, China, these are the markets that have really held up in the wake of the correction. And so I think over the near term, over the next 1 or 2 weeks, it looks like the markets will be resilient. They should hold up, and some of the sectors that have been kind of doing well will continue to benefit from that. Most of the sectors are below the 50 and 200 EMA, so you could see some kind of a rally in other sectors, and that could hit resistance. But I think overall, we are in a not volatile place where the markets should hold up and the Fed should hike. I think the real risk is in the second half when the hikes are done and the Fed could tighten its balance sheet, which will be the real test for the markets. But I think so far the rate hikes have been really absorbed fairly.
Actually, that was my next question, because this is now something which the market knows, right? And this is what the bond market is also pricing in. But what the bond market is also pricing in is, if you look at the long-ended bonds, is that at some point in 23, there might even be cuts from the Fed. So it becomes very interesting, right? So how much of the worst case outcome has already been priced in by the market? Or do you think when we actually get there and see more rate hikes, the market will still react?
So I think in this market, it is very difficult to forecast and price what the central banks will do and how the markets will react to it, because there are too many moving parts. Inflation itself is kind of very difficult to project. But overall, I think we will let the markets kind of decide and tell us which way to go. So as of now, if you look at India, it's kind of hit a near-term low. It's bouncing back. We'll look for some kind of a move above the 50 DMA and for it to hold the moving averages. And also in the near term, given it's expected to open today, we'd look to see a very strong follow through, something like a 1.5% move on very strong volumes to see the confirmation of this trend that has been going on for the last 1 or 2 weeks. That will tell us that there is strength, and then if it holds, then we'll kind of start increasing risk. Outside of that, I think when we started the year, people were expecting 6-7 hikes of 25 basis points each, and the Fed has kind of done really well. They've done even 7,500 basis points, and so the base has been higher. And I don't think the market is going to be so weak or the economy will weaken where the Fed will have to pivot and go back and cut immediately. They have the data, and I think so far they've really managed it well. So I don't see any cause for concern there.
All right, no cause for concern. Vipin, good morning. From an Indian market standpoint, what is your view? Because, we've covered quite a bit of ground. I mean, in the last 1 month, the Nifty has seen almost an 800-point rally from the lows of 15,100. You think the worst of the sell-off is now behind us? And what kind of trajectory do you see for the index itself over the next couple of months?
Yeah, I think the intensity of fall we've seen in India has been very moderate compared to global markets. We are 11-12% off highs compared to some of the other indices worldwide that are 15, 20, 25% off highs. So we've managed that really well. It was really extended on the downside. So the near-term bounce back we've seen was expected. And as I said, now from here on, do they hit the resistance levels? Does Nifty kind of move above the 50 and 200 DMA, which is roughly 8 and 10% from here? And more importantly, is the rally broad-based? So far, we've seen only energy, auto, and FMCG do well. These are the sectors that are holding above the moving averages, but most of the other sectors are below one or both of the averages. So we need to see a broader rally, more sectors participate, leaders move up. Even you mentioned Reliance. If those stocks come back up, HDFC, then I think this could sustain.
Vipin, if you track sectors and stocks here in India, which are the best positioned with the best risk rewards?
Yeah. So I think consumer and auto are really holding up well. In consumer, we've got Varun Beverages and ITC on our focus list. Outside of that, Dmart and Jubilant Food are really holding up well. These are good setups to chase at this point. On the industrial side, we've recently added Siemens and ABB India. They've shown good strength. On the auto side, Mahindra and Mahindra looks a bit extended. Tube Investments is on our focus list. Maruti is kind of doing really well. We also have some specialty chemical plays like Gujarat Fluorochemicals that are doing well. On the healthcare side, it's kind of underperformed, but still the setups for Sun and Cipla look good. So I think autos, consumer, specialty chemicals, industrials, these are the places where the setups are really good. On the other hand, there are obviously beaten down stocks, some in IT, some in banks, that really seasoned players can look to accumulate. But I think retail at this point in time should kind of stay away from that.
That was my next question then, Vipin. IT, how much more you reckon, both for the large caps and mid caps? And within the space, what would be 3 or 4 names that you would look to accumulate, if at all, in this decline?
So the decline has been kind of really sharp for these stocks compared to how stable they've been. TCS came off, and so they're not really seeing any near-term revenue momentum with them. On the other hand, the margins are kind of coming off. So with the large cap players, either look for setups that are really beaten down. Wipro is something that has come off really sharply. So as we go into the results, if it stabilizes or after the results, that could be a good place to buy. HCL Tech tends to come back nicely. That is another place. In the mid-cap space, the valuations were really extended. The Ps were very high. On top of that, you have supply-side pressures. So any mid-cap play that is able to maintain its revenue momentum, they don't necessarily need to beat it, but are able to benefit from rupee depreciation, are able to maintain, are able to manage the supply-side pressures. I think those will see some kind of stability, but I think in the near term, the pressure there will be for P multiples to moderate, given that some of those companies traded a premium to the larger ones, which will really demand tough execution for those multiples to sustain.
Okay. One final question then, Vipin. I do want your view on banks because we have 2 big banks, ICICI Bank and Kotak, reporting their earnings on Saturday. You have HDFC Bank that will be reacting to numbers today. But technically, how are these positioned?
So I think HDFC Bank numbers are decent. You can only kind of split hairs with the asset quality. Outside of that, everything is kind of really healthy and good. It has really kind of been extended on the downside. We would look for it to move up and retake some of the moving averages. ICICI has been stable. It's consolidating. Nothing much to see. Most of these charts are similar. They came off and are now up like 10-15%. Kotak Bank looks really strong compared to these two. And so I think that would be the pecking order. We'd kind of look at Kotak more favorably. We'd look for HDFC to stop falling like that at some point in time and start either the moving averages have to catch up, the stock can consolidate, or the stock moves up. ICICI has been resilient, so I think it is more in a consolidation mode. And we'll just wait for the results to see.
Vipin, thanks a lot for joining us and have a good day. That's the